there. It's Saturday afternoon and I'm out in my car. It is just too beautiful to stay inside today. So, I've been to this spot before. This is where that little gazebo is. I'm a little bit closer than what I was before though. I'm going to work on sketching this scene right here. This is in Old Town Middleton. It's a little shopping mall. I have pointed my camera down. I'm going to open up my little box here, see if I can get as much as I can of it in there. So my composition book, my pens. I want to talk about the watercolor ground today and pull out the glue here. Maybe my Stabilo pencil. I had a question on my last video if I glued the pages together in my composition book. For this project, I was working in a actual watercolor journal for my drive-by paintings that I did last year, my art behind the steering wheel, drive-by paintings. Pretty much have filled that book up. I still have a couple pages, but I switched to this composition book when I started doing my letters because it has ruled paper. And I like the composition book because it is, let me get to the center here. I'm not quite to the center yet. You can see that it is stitched. I hope you can see. It's actually stitched right down the center here. And it's pretty, the binding is pretty firm. I mean, that's just the nature of these composition books. I paid $1 for this. But the question is, do you glue your pages together? Now, for what I'm doing, I do not, for this project, I have not been gluing my pages together. For two reasons. I'm using watercolor and the ink in my pen, my fountain pen here, is water soluble. And it does not soak through to the other side. So, and this page, while yes, it is, this paper, while yes, it is fairly thin for doing all sorts of mixed media projects on here. If you want to use this as an art journal, where you were doing lots of stenciling and rubber stamping and embellishing, where you would need a heavy paper, I would say yes, you would probably want to glue 2 or 3 pages together. But for my purposes, and you can see here how the worst problem I have with this is when I use water on my pages, it warps. But that does not bother me. I mean, to me, that's like an art journal. And to be honest with you, once there's a lot of pressure, once I'm done with this book and store it, and there's a lot of pressure put down on that, this warping will eventually flatten out. And it does not bother me. Writing on here. Now see, I glued Lucia's letter on this page, and it made it fairly strong. I mean, here's one page, while I also collaged on the other side. So this is a fairly strong page by the time I glued paper on this side and glued the envelope and napkins down on this side, and the same for here. This one's not quite as strong because it's only collaged on one side. But the paper took it well. I do not have any problem with, let me get to, let's see. Okay, here's, well, let me find a better one here. See if I can find a page here where, what I'm saying is my writing, and I don't think I have a good example of it, maybe here. I drew a little coffee cup here, but look on the opposite side. There's no soaking through. Here's the coffee cup right here, and I drew little flowers over here. And if you flip over here, none of that writing soaked through to the other side. You can kind of see the pressure, but there's no soaking through of my ink because it's water soluble. Now, if I had alcohol ink, and I've noticed even ballpoint pen ink will soak through to the other side. But with water soluble ink, I do not have a problem. I do not have a problem with, here's a watercolor that I did. Do not have a problem with it soaking through on the other side. This entire page is not treated at all. Here I did a collage of a magazine, my Life magazine. I bought that last month. And it made the page stronger. It warped it a little on this side. But that did not matter to me. You know, for my purposes, for this journal, doesn't bother me at all. So what I'm going to work on today is that little scene in Middleton that I showed you in the prior segment. And I think I'm going to work on, I'm not going to work on this page with that picture, but I glued some more of those Shakespeare. This page I ripped up. I might write my letter on this page and draw on the opposite page here. The other thing I wanted to talk about these pages was when I glued down these pages, I did not have anything to mute out the text. So I pulled the pages out of the book, but I thought, man, I'm going to have to use some gesso or something, and I think gesso is too much of a grit to use on these pages. So I have some of this Daniel Smith watercolor ground, and when I prepped this page and even the text on these two pages, I just took a thin layer of that watercolor ground and used it as you would a gesso to mute out some of that text in the background. And I think I'm going to like that. Okay, now after I've done my chattering, I want to say a lot of comments on this Shakespeare and the chicken coop page. And I really thank you for all the comments on that. I think that a lot of people really did like this page. I wish I could find more scenes like that around Madison. But we'll just have to keep hunting. And then this is my Wisconsin Trade Center page here. But I think on this page, I think I got a really good composition of this. This page really did work for me. Now, let's see if I can accomplish the same thing over here. Okay, I changed my position to another little parking spot in the Middleton area. And I like this little storefront. I didn't know this little storefront was there. It says Christmas in Yarn. That little flag flying right there. Christmas in Yarn. And of course they're open, and I did go in there and I bought an ornament, but don't tell. Saturday, October 25th, 2014. Hello to the viewers of The.Meri.Atelier. Today, I needed to mail a swap envelope, so I planned to also take along my book of writings. This whole weekend is supposed to be nice. I just want nothing more for the next couple days than to be in my car sketching and writing my letters. Today I wanted to try out my fountain pen over the watercolor ground that I muted the text down with on these two pages. I do find that it writes nicely over the watercolor ground medium, but the tip of my fountain pen tends to get caught on the edges of the collaged book page. I went back to a place in Old Middleton where I have sketched before, the gazebo and the storefront. I am much happier with the pages I did today than the ones I did in my other watercolor book. These pages are a little curled on the edges, but they will flatten out. I am only going to write one page today. I did a lot of talking at the beginning of this video, and I need to go home and edit the travel tag video so that I can put it up early tomorrow morning and spend my entire tomorrow afternoon sketching. So this will be a short letter, but what a fun way to spend my Saturday afternoon. I will write again on the next page. Saturday, October 25th, 2014. Mary at The.Meri.Atelier.